$33 billion. That's how much Americans are sitting on in unclaimed credit card rewards. And that's just the points in the accounts. It's not accounting for credits that people have forgotten or just didn't understand how to use, points sitting around far too long, and perks that they didn't even know existed. And with programs changing faster than ever, including a massive devaluation that just dropped, the cost of getting these wrong is only getting worse. I've redeemed between 2 to 3 million points over the years and still catch myself making some of these mistakes. So today, we're breaking it all down, 8 credit card mistakes that are costing people thousands and what to do instead, including a hidden perk that is completely free and comes in real handy when traveling abroad. Alright, starting off with something that may not seem like a credit card mistake at first, but can end up being the most expensive one on the list. If you're interested in credit cards, you probably open them regularly, and that's fine. But if you're going for a mortgage, a car loan, or just financing is on your horizon, the way you manage your credit matters more than most people think. On a $400,000 loan with a score between 760 and 680 could be the difference of $40,000 in interest. Drop that to an extreme 640 and the interest exceeds $100,000. And for a lot of people, this score is directly tied to how they use their credit cards or mismanaging them. Take payment history, the biggest factor. You'll want to make sure you're paying in full and on time every single time on all of your cards. That way, you're also avoiding any of those percentage APR fees that you may have to pay. Amounts owed or utilization. It's kind of like how much of your total available credit you're actually using. So if you regularly max out your credit cards and then don't pay it off until the end, or close out even no annual fee cards and reduce your overall credit, that could hurt your score. Length of credit history, same thing. Consider downgrading to no annual fee cards or just keeping these no annual fee cards open so you can keep their history. New credit, each time you apply for a credit card and there's a hard pull, that can temporarily affect your score, which is something you don't want close to a loan application. It's something I did for a short period before getting my car loan or when I was looking to purchase a place a few years ago, which never ended up happening. And credit mix, which usually takes care of itself. The point is, having good credit card habits comes first, way before trying to maximize the rewards you earn and whatnot. Your credit profile matters more than you think. Now, this next one can quietly bleed value every month. If you're putting all of your spend on one card, even a decent one, you could still be leaving hundreds of dollars in value on the table every year. To start, if you're putting everything on a card that doesn't give you any rewards, then at least jump to one that gives you around 2% back with no strings attached, like the Citi Double Cash card. Once you're there, you can take it a step further by analyzing where most of your spend actually goes. Maybe you spend a lot in groceries, then consider a card like the Blue Cash Preferred giving you 6% in groceries up to pretty reasonable limits. Or the Freedom Flex with 5% in rotating categories, also up to pretty solid quarterly limits. Or something like the Capital One Saver card giving you 3% in common categories like dining and groceries. Notice also how most of these cards have no annual fees. Even the Blue Cash Preferred is no annual fee, at least in the first year. The ideal setup really depends on that specific person's lifestyle. If you're like me and dine out a lot or spend on travel, then having 2 to 3 cards that cover a solid 2% baseline, as well as elevated earnings in dining and travel, really adds up. Add on the Freedom Flex with rotating categories when they do hit, to me is a really strong setup. It doesn't need to be too complicated, but just earning 1, 2, sometimes 3% or more on a big chunk of your spend can really add up over the years. Now, if we take a closer look at these cards, you'll notice that the rewards are actually paid out in points. Yes, you can then convert these points back to cashback to get those percentage rates, but points actually matter even more, and that's where most people leave out some massive value. So how are people using these points? The most common mistake I see is redeeming for gift cards or statement credit at less than 1 cent per point. If you're going to cash out, at least aim for that 1 cent per point, but if you're able to, find ways to redeem for more value. For example, with Chase points, where you can redeem your points up to 2 cents per point through their portal in certain cases. But the real power is when you can turn these points to be worth 3, 4, sometimes 5 cents per point or more, and that's through transfer partners. Each of these major issuers, Chase, American Express, Capital One, Citi, Bilt, all have between 10 and 20 partners each that you can transfer their currencies into, typically at favorable rates. I've transferred my points into programs like Aeroplan and Flying Blue for experiences like these and these, In business class, valuing my points at between 3 to 4 cents per point. And it's not just business class. You can fly Virgin Atlantic from the West Coast to Europe in economy for just around 9,000 points. I mean, just by hitting that welcome bonus on the $95 Sapphire Preferred card is enough to fly you business class over to Asia or several trips in economy. Plus, many of these programs run transfer bonuses. That's getting between 20 to 40% more points when you're transferring into these partners, give you more value from your hard work. Now, yes, these higher value redemptions do take more effort to actually understand and find availability, but there are more and more tools nowadays like Seats.Aero that help along the way. So the option is there. Now, speaking of points, this is one I see a lot, especially for people more new to the space, where they say, I fly Delta a lot. That means I should just focus on Delta cards and Delta miles, right? I get the logic, but airline-specific programs like Delta Sky Miles or United Mileage Plus lock you into just one partner. If their redemptions devalue, which they happen all the time, then your points just lost a ton of value where you have no other option. Flexible point currencies like the issuers we mentioned earlier give you options, including transferring to some of those airlines like Delta, United, even Atmos for booking Alaska and Hawaii. If one program changes, you can use a different one. Plus, you can earn across multiple of these issuers and then transfer into the same program, like what I do across a lot of my cards transferring into Aeroplan and Flying Blue. That flexibility is key and what has enabled me to enjoy experiences like these, not just for myself, but my close ones and family and friends as well. So if you're just starting out on your credit card journey, I would recommend going for these flexible point currencies first so you can keep your options open. Now that said, having options is nice, but you don't want to hoard your points just waiting and hoping for that perfect redemption. Take Chase for example, an issuer that has been wildly popular because they're able to transfer to Hyatt, giving pretty solid value for hotel bookings with relatively low effort. But if you are hoarding all your Chase points, hoping to use it all on some Hyatt redemption, then well, they just announced a major devaluation where they're expanding the number of tiers and most likely increasing the number of points you need across most of their popular hotels. But of course, it's not just hotels. Flying Blue recently raised business class redemption prices and then gated a lot of their lowest price availability behind their elite status. KrisFlyer bumped up their redemptions not too long ago. And just from my own experience, searching every few weeks or so, just seeing what's out there, is getting pretty hard to find any availability. Popular routes that may have had straggling seats here and there just don't exist anymore. Points are not an investment. They lose value over time on average. So if you have a trip in mind and dates and redemptions work, just book it. Don't sit around waiting for that perfect redemption just to squeeze a little bit more value out of your points. Alright, switching gears, there is one category of cards that surprises most people because there's some misconception here. You don't need an LLC, employees, or an official business to qualify for business credit cards. If you have a side hobby making or selling things, drive Uber, tutor, you may qualify as a sole proprietor. The barrier to entry is lower than most people think, but the bonuses available here are much higher. Like the Amex Platinum Business Card, offering as high as a couple 100,000 points for its welcome bonus, or even the Capital One Venture X business version, giving as high as 300,000 miles for its welcome bonus. And Chase Ink cards, some of them with no annual fees, altogether can add up to another couple 100,000 Chase points. The other benefit is that these business cards typically don't report to your personal credit, and so don't count towards rules like the Chase's 524 rule. Spending requirements are significantly higher here, so try to time it with periods where you expect a lot higher spend, so you're not stretching just to meet these minimum spend targets. But these options are out there with great value if you can make it work. Now, points are a big part of credit cards, but the other part is how people typically justify paying those ever-increasing annual fees, and that's with the credits and benefits that come with the cards. But a lot of these go unredeemed, billions upon billions of dollars worth, and probably even higher now that credit cards are offering more and more in potential reward. For example, the Amex Platinum card, my highest value card over the years, which yes, does have a really high $8.95 in annual fees, but advertises over $3,000 in value that can be had. Fortunately, you don't need to use all of them to make the card make sense. For example, just using the hotel credit and maybe Resi credit already makes up for that every year, but these do add up in terms of needing more and more effort to keep track of. And knowing that most people won't use most of these benefits is a win-win to these companies. They can on one hand advertise such such high potential value to then justify their guaranteed increase of annual fees they collect, knowing the math will probably work out in their favor. And when you have multiple cards, it gets even harder, like the $300 travel portal credit from my Venture X, or the hotel credits on the City Strata Premier or this Chase Sapphire Preferred. My approach: prioritize the highest value and easiest ones first. For me, that's typically like the hotel credit on the Amex Platinum card or the $300 travel portal credit from my Venture X. After that, it really just comes down to what fits my lifestyle and travel plan. It's okay not to hit them all as long as it doesn't hurt your financials and that it still makes sense. Like the Sapphire Preferred, I don't use the hotel credit to help offset the fee, but having the card allows me to pull my Chase points and use them through transfer partners. So for me, that is worth it. The point here is to make sure you keep track of what you have, whether it's a spreadsheet, have superhuman memory, or using one of those third-party apps. Don't let a ton of your credits and benefits go to waste while you're blindly paying for them with annual fees. Now, let's talk about some fun ones with a lot more value you can get from your existing credit cards that most people don't know they exist. Like card offers. Amex, Chase, Capital One, Citi, they all have sections in their apps where you can activate targeted offers towards many retailers. On the Amex Platinum alone, I've earned hundreds of dollars over the years spending on things I would have bought anyways, while also being able to stack with Rakuten most of the time, compounding my Amex points earning. Another recent example, I saw that with my Venture X, I could get 12 times points on Viator bookings. And with my upcoming travels requiring a lot of group bookings for trips or cooking classes, that's thousands of dollars to spend, and at 12 times points with 2 cents per point each in some rough valuation, that's like getting 24% back in travel value. Then there's paying with points on Amazon. No, I don't mean paying for your entire purchase, but sometimes just a few dollars worth of points to then unlock 20, 30, sometimes even 50% discounts on your Amazon purchases. Referral bonuses. If you have your friends who are looking for credit cards or a P2 and the welcome bonuses they see through the links are the same, then it doesn't hurt them and you can earn some extra points. Some cards also have primary car rental insurance, saving you $20 to $30 per day when you're going through car rentals. Then return protection, covering items retailers won't take back, which makes it easier when you're shopping final sales, which is where all the deals are usually. And then another more hidden perk that comes in real handy when you're traveling abroad, and that's if you have a Visa Signature card or Visa Infinite card, you can get free international data through an eSIM with GigSky, either 1 or 3 gigs depending on your card. None of these type of perks require extra spending. They're already baked into your card. You just need to know about them to then take advantage of all of these benefits. And combined with all of the other mistakes and things to know about credit cards, that could save you thousands in missed value that really adds up year after year. These are the type of things that I'm trying to keep in mind as I'm building out my setup and planning for this year. So to see how I'm breaking all that down, check out this video here and I'll see you over there.